The girl in the cryo chamber. The lights flickered above. Red alarms flashed in broken rhythm as the metal hallway shook again. Smoke curled from the ceiling. Something had gone very wrong inside the alien facility. Lieutenant Jason Ward moved, slowly, carefully. His breathing was steady, his hands tight around his plasma rifle. His boots crunched glass from shattered containment tubes. Behind him padded a silent figure. Bitey, his hybrid companion. Part dog, part wolf, part something stronger, loyal, fierce. Quiet now, but always alert. Jason wasn't supposed to be here. The mission was simple: recon the facility, mark survivors, if any, and return to base. But the deeper he went, the clearer it became. There were no survivors, or so he thought. Then he heard it. A soft sound, a whisper, a voice that trembled. Please. No more. Please don't. Jason raised his hand and froze. Bitey stopped too, ears pricking forward. The sound came from behind a large metal door marked with strange symbols. Jason stepped closer, wiped off the grime with his glove, and found an old console beside it. The screen was cracked, but a blinking light remained. Cryo status: active. Jason's eyes narrowed. Someone's inside, he muttered. He typed in a manual override code. The door hissed open with a loud groan. Cold air spilled out like a breath held for years. Inside the chamber, surrounded by flickering blue lights and cracked machinery, was a small glass pod, and in it, a girl, or something like one. She was small, barely up to Jason's chest in height, curled into a ball. Her skin was smooth, soft gray with a light shimmer. Her head had short antennae, and her arms were thinner than a human's, ending in delicate three-fingered hands. She looked fragile, scared. Her eyes were large and glowing softly yellow. Jason stepped forward. She gasped. Her eyes opened fully. She began to scream silently, mouth wide but no sound. Bitey growled softly. Jason held up a hand. No, Bitey. Stay, she's afraid. The girl backed into the far end of the pod, shaking violently. She wrapped her thin arms around her knees. Jason looked at her, then slowly crouched down. Hey, he said gently. It's okay. I'm not here to hurt you. She didn't understand his words, but she saw his eyes. Soft, calm. Not like the others who came before. Jason opened his pack and took out a small ration bar. He unwrapped it slowly and laid it on the edge of the pod. Then, with the gentlest voice he could use, he said, Don't worry, he won't bite. He pointed at Bitey, who was now lying down, tail wagging slightly. The girl stared at the animal, trembled, but didn't look away. Jason took a slow breath. He reached to the control panel beside the pod and pressed open. Steam hissed over. The top of the pod began to rise. The girl didn't move. Then, very slowly, she crawled out. She stood barefoot on the floor, legs shaking. Jason didn't move. She looked at the food, sniffed it, then quickly grabbed it and took a small bite. Tears, filled her eyes, not from fear but from taste. She hadn't eaten real food in weeks, maybe months. Jason took off his jacket and gently placed it over her shoulders. You're safe now, he said softly. Still no words from her, only trembling, only wide eyes. She looked at Bitey again. He yawned and tilted his head, wagging his tail once. She touched the ground nervously, then reached out and touched him. Bitey didn't move. She touched his ear, then his fur, and finally, she sat down beside him. Jason smiled. She trusts you more than me. He chuckled. Then the walls shook again. The facility groaned. More explosions. Jason's smile faded. He stood quickly. We need to move. Now. He lifted the girl gently in his arms. She let him. She was light, almost weightless. Hang on, he whispered. He nodded to Bitey. The animal barked once, then they ran, through crumbling hallways, past broken machines. deeper into the unknown. Jason didn't know what this girl was, or why she was there. But one thing was clear, she was afraid of something far worse than him, and whatever had done this to her might still be alive. Trapped below with a monster. The hallway behind them collapsed just seconds after they passed through it. Dust and sparks rained from the ceiling. Jason coughed and tightened his grip on the alien girl in his arms. She clung to him now, not tightly, but not pushing him away either. Her glowing eyes darted from shadow to shadow, scanning every crack and sound. Bitey led the way, growling low at every new corner. His tail stayed down, his ears sharp. That wasn't normal. Jason had learned something in war. When the dog gets nervous, you should too. They reached a stairwell, but the upper path was completely blocked with debris. Jason cursed under his breath. "We'll have to go down," he muttered. The girl looked at him. "Down," she whispered. It was her first word. Jason blinked in surprise. "You speak?" She looked away. "Little human words," she said softly. Her voice trembled. "Not safe. Down." Jason knelt. "Why?" Her fingers pointed to the dark stairway. "Below. Monster sleeps down." Bitey growled again. Jason glanced at his watch. Oxygen levels were dropping. His radio was still dead. They had no choice. "Then we'll be quiet," he whispered. "And we'll stay together." She hesitated, then slowly nodded. He carried her again, and the three descended into the lower level. It was cold, much colder, and it smelled strange, like rust, chemicals, and something old. The walls here were cracked. Strange symbols were painted in red. Some looked like warnings, others looked like begging. They passed broken cages, blood-stained floors. Jason said nothing. Neither did the girl, but her breathing got faster. Suddenly, Bitey stopped. He growled low. A shape moved in the distance. Jason lowered the girl behind a pillar and raised his weapon. Something walked. Slowly. Heavy. It wasn't human. It wasn't alien either. It was both. A massive creature came into view. 10 feet tall, hunched, stitched together from different beings. One arm looked human. The other was mechanical. Its face was a metal mask, but beneath it, skin pulsed. Wires ran into its back like veins. It didn't see them. Yet. The girl grabbed Jason's arm. They called it Project Silence. They said it couldn't feel, couldn't scream. Jason whispered, "Can it hear?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. Hears everything. Feeds on fear." Jason looked at her. "Then we don't give it any." They waited. The creature passed. For now. Jason gently picked her up again. They moved toward a side corridor. It was narrow but Bitey fit. The girl spoke again. "I had a name," she whispered. Jason looked down. "What was it?" She shook her head. "Forgotten. They called me Test 31C, like bottle." Jason frowned. "Not anymore," he said. "You'll have a real name again." She blinked, then smiled. Only slightly. But it was real. They reached a locked door at the end of the corridor. Jason tapped the keypad. Dead. He looked at the girl. She tilted her head, then reached into a small panel and touched a glowing node. The door hissed open. Jason smiled. "Smart," she shrugged. "Watched them for years." The room was small. Old bunk beds, broken lights, emergency rations. Jason put her down and checked for supplies. Bitey sniffed every corner. They were safe. For now. Jason sat beside the girl. "What do I call you?" he asked. She looked at him, then whispered, "Liari." Jason repeated it. "Liari. Pretty name." She nodded shyly, then asked, "What is Bitey?" Jason laughed softly. "A dog, kind of. He's my best friend." Liari reached out a hand. Bitey looked at her, then slowly stepped closer. She touched his fur again. This time she didn't shake. "Warm," she whispered. Jason leaned back. "Tomorrow, we find a way out." Liari nodded, then paused. "Monster knows now." Jason's eyes opened. "What?" She stared at the door, smelled me, felt me. Jason grabbed his weapon. "Then we better rest while we can." The light above flickered. Outside, in the tunnels, metal claws scraped the wall. And far away, a voice like a broken speaker whispered, "Test 31. Come back." The corridor of echoes. The room was silent except for the hum of old machines and the soft breathing of 3 living beings. A soldier, a girl, and a beast. Jason didn't sleep much. He sat near the door, plasma rifle resting across his lap, watching, listening, because somewhere in those endless tunnels, something else was listening too. Liari had curled up on the old mattress, wrapped in Jason's jacket. She whispered in her sleep, soft clicks and short alien words that Jason couldn't understand. But they sounded like fear. Bitey didn't sleep at all. The hybrid dog sat facing the door, growling every few minutes, low and deep. Not angry, not loud, just warning. When Jason finally stood to stretch his legs, the floor creaked softly. Liari opened her glowing eyes instantly. "You didn't rest?" she asked. Jason shook his head. "Didn't feel right." She sat up slowly, then said, "It's awake, moving again." Jason stared at her. "How do you know?" She pointed at the wall. "I hear it. In the walls. They left microphones everywhere. I can still hear echoes." Jason walked to the wall, pressed his ear. At first, nothing. Then, scrape, scrape, clunk, sniff. Something was crawling through the ventilation shafts. Jason whispered, "Time to move." They packed quickly. Liari held onto a small light source. Her fingers glowed faintly, lighting the way. Bitey led again, teeth bared, steps silent. They moved into a long, curving corridor. The walls here were strange, lined with dark glass panels, screens, each one flickered with static and strange symbols. Alien letters. Some screens blinked too. Life as Liari walked past. Jason stopped. The screen showed her, images of her as a child, sleeping, eating, crying. He clenched his fists. "Were they watching you the whole time?" Liari nodded. "Always." Jason looked up and saw himself appear on one of the screens. Now they were being watched. They started moving faster. But then, voices, not from ahead, not from behind, but from the walls. At first, Jason thought it was in his head. Then he realized they were recordings. Hundreds of voices, scientists, soldiers, executives. Each voice said something different. She's responding to the DNA bonding. Her mind is rejecting the human emotional range. Test 31C is showing empathy. Terminate emotional growth. She called out for her mother last night. Begin the silence injection again. Do not allow her near the hybrid dog. Project Silence must not fail. Liari covered her ears. "No more, please." Jason turned to her and knelt down. "Liari, look at me. Those are just recordings. They're not here now. Just noise." She opened her eyes, tears welling. "They made me think I was broken." Jason shook his head. "No, you're not broken. You're alive. That makes you stronger than all of them." A sharp sound rang out. A bang. Then, silence. Jason stood quickly and aimed his rifle. From behind one of the glass walls, a face pressed forward. The monster. It stared at them through the glass. Its metal face twisted, broken wires sparking from one eye. It raised a hand and pressed it to the wall. Then, slam! It smashed the wall. Cracks formed. Jason yelled, "Run!" Liari ran ahead. Bitey followed beside her. Jason stayed back and fired at the glass. Plasma bolts hit the monster, but it didn't stop. It just stared at him. It wasn't here to kill. It was here to collect. The hallway tilted suddenly. Another explosion. The lights went dark. Only Liari's faint glow remained. They ran deeper into the corridor, past rooms marked with no entry, past labs with empty tanks. Finally, Jason saw a door labeled emergency lift, lower level escape. He slammed his hand against the panel. Nothing. Liari, he shouted. She stepped forward and placed her hand on the pad. The door slid open, with a long hiss. Inside, a lift platform. Old, rusty, but still working. They rushed inside. Bitey barked once. The door began to close, but the monster's hand appeared. It grabbed the edge. Jason raised his rifle and fired directly into the hand. The monster didn't scream, but it twitched. Its grip slipped. The door sealed shut. The lift started to move. Liari fell to her knees, crying quietly. Bitey nudged her gently with his head. Jason knelt down beside her. "You were right," he whispered. "It's awake." She looked up. "I don't want to go back." "You won't," he promised. "I don't want to be alone again." Jason reached for her hand. "You're not." The lift shook as it descended. The monster's face, burned and broken, still lingered in Jason's mind. But something else troubled him more. On the last screen they had passed, in alien letters, one message had flashed red. Neural link detected. Subject 31C connected to human. Jason hadn't seen it before. But now he wondered, what did that mean? Bitey's stand. The lift groaned and shook as it descended deeper into the earth. Jason held onto the rails, eyes sharp, heart racing. Liari sat beside him on the metal floor, her knees pulled to her chest. Bitey stood like a silent guardian, staring at the sealed door, ready. Each second stretched like a lifetime. Jason looked down at Liari. "Are you okay?" She nodded slowly, but her glow had dimmed. "I'm just tired." Jason placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You've been strong, braver than most soldiers I know." She looked up, her large yellow eyes meeting his. "No one ever said that to me before." Jason gave a small smile. "Well, I meant it." Suddenly, the lift screeched to a stop. The lights flickered, then everything went dark. Complete silence. Jason raised his rifle. "Stay behind me," he whispered. Bitey moved forward, sniffing the air. A faint red glow lit up the far wall. Emergency backup power. Jason stepped off the lift platform. The room ahead was wide, hollow, filled with strange shapes. Wreckage of experiments. Broken. Pods. Twisted metal arms. Glass tubes. A place of failed ideas. Then, a low rumble. Not from above. From behind them. The lift platform they had just used. It began to rise again. Jason's heart dropped. "That thing's following," he whispered. Liari stepped forward. "He always finds me, no matter where I hide." Jason looked at her. "Then maybe it's time we stop running." Liari frowned. "But we can't win, it's stronger." Jason glanced at Bitey. "No, but maybe it's not about strength." He pointed toward a half-open service hatch nearby. "Liari, go through there. Crawl if you must. It should lead to the lower escape bay. I'll distract it." "No," she cried. He handed her a flashlight. "That's an order. You want to live? You will go. Now." She hesitated, then kissed his hand, and vanished into the tunnel. The lift doors slammed open above. Then a sound like a train crashing into metal. It dropped. Fast. It was here. Jason stood his ground, plasma rifle ready. Bitey walked. To his side, tail still, legs firm. Jason glanced at his old companion. "You sure about this?" Bitey gave a short, sharp bark, then growled. The monster emerged, even more broken than before. One eye socket sparked, its mechanical spine exposed. Wires hung from its ribs like tentacles, but it was faster now. Jason fired once, twice. Plasma bolts hit its chest. It stumbled, but didn't fall. It roared, not a sound, more like a vibration that shook the floor. Then it charged. Jason braced himself. But before he could shoot again, Bitey lunged. The hybrid dog leapt into the air, straight at the monster's face. Teeth met metal, fur met wire. The two crashed to the ground. Jason shouted, "Bitey!" The dog bit down hard on the creature's throat joint. Sparks flew, metal cracked. The monster tried to slam Bitey off, but Bitey held on. Jason ran forward, aimed point blank, and fired. The plasma hit its exposed spine. It howled. Jason fired again. This time it fell. Smoke poured from its back. Its eye went dark. Jason ran to Bitey. The dog was still. Jason knelt down. "No, no, no, don't do this, boy." Bitey's eyes fluttered, then opened. He licked Jason's hand. Still alive. Jason let out a long breath. "You crazy beast. You did it." He carried Bitey in his arms and followed the tunnel Liari had gone through. Minutes later, the air began to shift. Fresh air, warm air, and ahead, a bright door marked "Exit to Surface." Jason pushed it open, and there, Liari stood waiting. Tears ran down her cheeks. "You came back," she whispered. "I said you weren't alone," Jason answered. She ran to him, hugged him tightly. Even Bitey wagged his tail. The sky above was gray, but real. Wind blew across the cliffs. A rescue beacon blinked red on the horizon. Jason activated it, and then looked at Liari. She looked stronger now, clearer. He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You don't have to run anymore." She nodded, then asked, "Can I stay with you?" Jason didn't hesitate, always. The truth behind the bond. The sun broke through the gray sky as Jason, Liari, and Bitey stepped into the light. For the first time in years, Liari felt warmth on her skin that didn't come from a lab's artificial light. She blinked at the bow sky, her eyes adjusting. Jason watched her carefully. "Feels strange, doesn't it?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "It's too big," she whispered. "Too open." Jason smiled. "That's freedom." They walked across the flatland until they reached a small emergency shelter station. Jason activated the distress beacon. It would take hours, maybe a day, for any rescue craft to arrive. But now they were safe. No walls, no monsters, no wires in the ceiling listening to every breath. Liari sat on a rock, quiet, her arms around her knees. Jason sat beside her. "You okay?" She didn't answer at first, then said, "I remember something." Jason turned toward her. "From before?" She nodded. "Before the tests, before the glass tubes, before the scientists." She reached out and placed a hand on Jason's chest. "I remember a voice, not mine, not human. It said, 'One day you'll find the one, the bond will show you who you are.'" Jason's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Liari's fingers glowed softly. "When you touched me, back in the chamber, I felt something snap into place. Not pain, not fear. It was like waking up from a long dream." Jason looked confused. She continued. "The scientists called it an accident, said it was a malfunction." He raised an eyebrow. "What malfunction?" "The neural link." Jason's heart pounded. "I saw it on the screen," he whispered. "Right before we ran. Subject 31C linked to human." "What does that mean?" She looked at him. "You were never meant to be in that lab. You were just part of the rescue. But the moment you touched the glass, it bonded us. Something ancient, deep." Jason stood pacing. "Wait, neural links are used between trained pilots, or symbiotic species, not strangers." Liari nodded. "That's why they panicked. The connection was too strong. You felt my fear. That's why you didn't run. I felt your strength. That's why I trusted you." Jason sat down again. "So now what?" She turned to face him. "Now, we share something, not just memories, emotions, instincts. If I'm scared, you'll feel it. If you're angry, I'll sense it. Jason looked down at his hands. That explains a lot, he muttered. Back in the tunnels, I knew where you were even when I couldn't see you. She nodded. And I heard your heartbeat when the monster got close. It calmed me. Silence passed between them. Then Layari asked, Do you regret it? Jason met her eyes. No, he said. Not even for a second. She looked relieved, then said softly, They'll come for me. Jason clenched his fists. Let them try. She smiled gently. I don't want to be their experiment anymore. Jason stood. You're not. You're free now. Bitey barked once in agreement, tail thumping the ground. They ate ration bars and took turns resting. Later that night, a storm rolled across the horizon, thunder cracking like distant cannons. Jason stood outside the shelter's entrance, staring at the clouds. Layari joined him. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. Jason could feel what she was thinking. Fear of being taken again. Fear of losing her new life. He looked at her and said gently, No one's putting you back in a cage. Not while I'm breathing. She looked up at him. You mean that? He nodded. Then she asked, But what if I change? What if this bond changes who I am? Jason paused, then smiled. Maybe that's the point. She tilted her head. We don't become less by connecting, we become more. You saved me down there just as much as I saved you. She touched her own chest. My heart still races when I think of the labs. Jason placed a hand over hers. Then let's give your heart new memories. Thunder rolled again, but this time neither of them flinched, because for the first time in a long time, they weren't alone. When they came for her. The rescue beacon had been blinking for hours. Jason kept checking the sky. So far, nothing. But his gut told him something else was coming. Not rescue, retrieval, and he was right. Sharp, high-pitched tone cut through the wind. Jason looked up. Through the clouds, a sleek black ship descended. No markings, no insignia. Not military, not rescue. Private. Silent. Dangerous. Layari stepped out of the shelter and froze. She knew that ship. They're here, she whispered. The ones who funded the lab. Jason grabbed his rifle. Stay inside. But she didn't move. I can feel them. Jason turned. You mean the bond? She shook her head. No, not through the link in my bones. They made me in their image. They can track me through things I don't even understand, Jason growled. Then we'll rip those things out. The ship landed silently. The hatch opened. Out stepped 4 figures, black armored suits, visors down, rifles in hand, and behind them, a man in a gray coat. Tall, cold eyes. Familiar. Jason Redford, he said with a slight smile. You've caused quite the disruption. Jason aimed his weapon. Back off. The man raised a brow. Still loyal, how touching, but that asset belongs to us. Jason moved in front of Layari. She's not an asset. She's a person. The man sighed. Always the emotional ones. Do you even know what's inside her? Do you know what the bond truly is? Jason didn't blink. I don't care. She was designed to adapt, to absorb. She has access to neural data from over 40 advanced species. And now, he looked at Jason. She has human code. Yours. Layari trembled. Behind Jason, they think I'm a weapon. Jason gritted his teeth. You're not. The man's smile faded. You can't protect her. Not from what's coming. Jason narrowed his eyes. Try me. The commandos moved forward. Jason opened fire. 3 plasma bolts hit the ground near their feet, warning shots. Next ones go through your helmets. The man in the coat raised a hand. Hold. Then he stepped forward alone. Let me speak to her. Jason blocked him again. No. But then Layari stepped out from behind Jason. It's okay, she said. Jason looked at her, shocked. "What are you doing?" she whispered. "I have to face this." She walked toward the man. He smirked. "There she is, Subject 31C. You look well." She tilted her head. "I'm not Subject 31C anymore. My name is Liari." He chuckled. "Cute." Then, he raised a small device and pressed a button. Liari screamed. She fell to her knees, glowing violently, her neural pathways lighting up. Jason rushed forward, but the man drew a sidearm and pointed it at him. "Stop, or she fries." Jason froze. Liari gritted her teeth. Her hands trembled. But something changed in her eyes. She looked at the device, then looked at Jason. Then she stood, still glowing, still hurting, but standing. She raised her hand, and the device sparked in the man's palm. "What?" he gasped. The device melted. She took another step forward. Jason realized she was controlling it. "You don't own me anymore," she said calmly. The man stepped back. The commandos lifted their rifles. Jason shouted, "Now!" He and Bitey charged forward. Liari unleashed a burst of energy, short, focused, not destructive but blinding. The commandos staggered. Jason tackled one. Bitey took down another. Liari pushed the remaining two aside with a wave of force, gentle, not fatal. Jason pinned the man in the coat. "Give me one reason not to end this." The man coughed, eyes wide. "She's more than you know. One day she'll burn everything. She's a ticking bomb." Jason leaned close. "Then I'll be her shield." Liari stepped beside him. "I choose who I am. And I choose him." Jason looked at her and smiled. They walked away from the wreckage. Left, the team behind. The black ship still burned as the wind picked up. They didn't look back. That night Liari sat beside the fire they built from old branches. She looked into the flames. "I never knew I could fight back." Jason stared at her. "You didn't need to fight alone." She smiled faintly, then asked, "Do you think the bond will fade?" Jason shook his head. "Not if we protect it." She nodded, then reached for his hand. He took it. Together, they sat under the stars, the girl once known as an asset, and the human who reminded her she was something more. The bond that saved them all. The stars glittered like a million silent watchers above the quiet planet. Jason and Liari sat side by side on a low ridge. Bitey lay curled near their feet, finally resting. The night was calm, but deep down, they both knew this was not the end of their story. It was just the beginning. For days they had remained hidden, moving from one safe zone to another. The black ship's signal had gone silent. No new hunters had come. But Jason knew better. The silence before the storm always felt like this. Then one morning the calm broke. A massive shadow fell over the valley. Jason looked up and his heart nearly stopped. A fleet. Not just one ship. Dozens. Maybe more. It wasn't the labs team. It was something bigger. Something ancient. Liari stepped out of the shelter, her skin glowing faintly again. She looked at the sky, frozen. Jason grabbed his gear. "Liari, what is it?" She whispered. "They're not here for us. They're here for me." Jason stared at her. "Who are they?" She didn't blink. "The creators, the ones who started the neural bond program. Long before the labs, long before Earth even knew about other life." Jason's throat dried. "And what do they want?" Liari turned to him, eyes glowing softly. "They want their weapon back." Jason clenched his fists. "You're not a weapon." She took his hand. "I know that now. Because of you." The ground shook. The largest ship lowered from the clouds. Then, a voice. Not through speakers. Not through sound. Straight into their minds. "Child, you are incomplete. Return to the Nexus. You belong with the Source." Liari winced, covering her ears. Jason stepped in front of her. "She's not going anywhere." The voice replied, "You are irrelevant, human." Jason narrowed his eyes. "No, I'm bonded. You touch her. You touch me." A moment passed. Then, The sky split open, a beam of light fell directly on them. Liari stood tall. Jason expected her to run. Instead, she stepped forward. "I'm not afraid," she said softly. Then she looked at Jason. "If I don't go, they'll never stop hunting us." Jason shook his head. "There has to be another way." "There is," she whispered. "If I finish the bond. If I choose to accept all of it. Not what they want, but what we make of it." Jason didn't fully understand, but he saw the fire in her eyes. He trusted it. "What do you need me to do?" She stepped closer and placed both hands on his face. "I need you to trust me even if it breaks us." "I already do," he said. Then, everything exploded in light, inside the Nexus. Jason floated. He didn't feel cold, or heat, or fear. He saw images, flashes of Liari's pain, her isolation, her first breath in the cryo chamber, her screams, her longing, and then his face, his voice. The moment he said, "Don't worry, he won't bite." Her first moment of hope, her first moment of belonging. Then he saw her memories blending with his regrets, his battles, his empty nights. They were one, not as control, not as command, as choice. He heard her voice inside him. "This is what they never understood. The bond isn't about power, it's about connection. They made me to conquer. You taught me to care." Then, the Nexus shattered. Jason and Liari stood in the field again, but everything had changed. The sky was clear, the ships were gone. Jason turned to her, stunned. "What did you do?" She smiled, tears in her glowing eyes. "I told them no." "And they listened?" She nodded. "Because for the first time, someone chose to bond without fear, without control. That changed everything." Jason laughed softly. "Guess you're more powerful than they thought." She chuckled. "And you're more stubborn than they expected." They stood there a while longer. Then Jason said, "What now?" Liari looked toward the stars. "We write our own future. Together." Months later, on a peaceful colony station, Jason and Liari worked as trainers, teaching others about peaceful neural bonds, about consent, trust, and unity between species. Bitey still roamed the halls like a legend. No one dared mess with him. Children laughed when Liari lit up glowing shapes in the air. Jason built homes with his hands again, not for war, but for families. They never forgot the pain, but they let it guide them, not define them. And every night under the stars, Jason and Liari still sat side by side, still bonded, still free.